Greetings viewers, Eric the Car Guy here, and today I'd like to talk to you about shocks and struts, specifically about inspecting your shocks and struts to see if they're in good working order, also to talk a little bit about what happens inside them when they go bad, and lastly some of the safety issues and concerns that could come up as a result of bad shocks and struts. One of the first things to look for when you're inspecting your struts is any leakage of oil on the outside of them. If you see leakage on the outside of the strut or shock, that usually means it's bad. The seals on the inside have allowed the oil to seep out, and as a result, the liquid is left, and without the liquid, the shock or strut is not going to work properly. I usually like to look in this area here up towards the top of the strut, because normally that's where you'll see it. That seal is at the top. You're looking in this area to see if there's any liquid, any seepage on the outside. As I said, if you do see some, it's probably time to replace the strut. Now my struts are pretty rusty on the outside. This car sat for a long period of time. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're bad, but it certainly doesn't look pretty, that's for sure. Now let's talk a little bit about what happens inside the strut when that fluid leaks out and what could happen to your ride quality and how it affects safety. Connected to the end of this shaft, which goes inside of this housing, there's a disc. And that disc has very small holes that are calibrated around the outside of it. And as the shaft, or as the disc, moves through the fluid inside the strut, it slows its movement down and controls it so it doesn't bounce around. Liquids are not compressible, so it's going to take some time for that fluid to bleed through the inner workings of this strut. Now when these go bad and the fluid leaks out, say to a bad seal or something like that, the fluid is no longer there. You have air in its place, and the air is very compressible, so the movement of the strut will not be controlled like this at all. It will pretty much bounce up and down. In fact, I've seen some that are so bad to where the shaft just falls down into the strut, so you lose complete control and stability. Now what this will cause in the shock or strut, it will cause it to lose its ability to dampen. What I mean when I say that, and this is one of the reasons why I call these dampers all the time, the springs on your vehicle actually hold it up and control ride height. It's the struts that control the movement of the suspension. And they do this by slowing it down, both in compression and when it releases. And this helps maintain control. It helps the tire maintain contact with the road. When these get very bad, enough of this fluid leaks out to where you've got air inside this cylinder. And with air inside this cylinder, you won't get this dampening effect. It'll just move as if there's nothing inside here. There will be none of this slow, controlled movement. And what happens, as I stated, your tire will lose contact with the road. And if your tire's not in contact with the road, you no longer have control of your vehicle. Another thing that can happen is increased braking distance. If you have worn shocks or struts, particularly on the front of the vehicle, it will cause it to dive more. And as a result, the weight will shift and it will take a lot longer to stop the vehicle. Directional control is also affected. As I stated, if you're going over a bump and you're on a turn, you've got the wheel turned this way, but if the tire's not in contact with the road, it doesn't matter which way you turn the wheel. It's going to go pretty much in a straight direction. So it's very important to maintain the health and integrity of your shocks and struts. Well, I hope that sums it up and gives you some better idea of what happens inside your shocks and struts when they go bad. And also some of the problems that could result, the safety issues that could result from bad shocks and struts. Increased stopping distance, the inability to maintain control of the vehicle, and your tires losing contact with the road. All bad things. So say if you're driving down the road and you hit a bump and it takes a lot longer to recover the vehicle, it might be time to come up in here and get a look at your shocks and struts to see if they're leaking, to see if there's any damage to the outside of them. That's another thing I should have mentioned is look for physical damage on the outside of them, maybe from a collision or something like that. That all can affect the operation of them. And if you do have a problem, address it sooner rather than later. If you have additional questions, I'm going to post the link in the descriptions to Monroe's website. They have a great support set up over there and describes a lot of the things I've mentioned in this video in detail. If you have other automotive questions, I would ask that you head over to EricTheCarGuy.com. If you wish to connect with me socially, I can be found on Google+, Facebook, Twitter, and now Instagram. Close each of my videos. Be safe, have fun, stay dirty, and keep it in control. I'll see you next time.